Is she gonna put it in again?
Well, she's in Florida, so it's gonna be tough, but I supposedly was gonna contact somebody.
She could, you could email it to her and email it back. Or
Yeah,
she can
yeah.
email.
Yeah, I know she was interested, so.
We got a new donation for, somebody very generous to the Conservation Commission, and they gave through George River Land Trust again, because they had to give to a 501(c)(3). And, so I say, oh, we still need to pay for the appraisal and for the environmental survey. And, like people around told us, oh, $2,500 each, and he was like, really good, said, okay, I'll give you $5,000, so it's been great. I just got the first estimate for the appraisal, $5,400. It's like, so I had two others that I had contacted before, and then they dropped. Already? Okay.
Or the meeting's not called to order anyway, it doesn't, we
But
can,
it
we
takes-
can continue to
Takes a
discuss. yeah.
few minutes to get it all.
What is the appraisal for just the transfer of the deed? What is the appraisal for?
The appraisal of the preserve, we need the appraisal so that LMF, is assured that what they are giving us is way below the value,
Mhm.
because we went in as a bargain sale, we sold it for so little money that,
Yeah.
there is like 135 acres or something
Yeah, yeah.
like that. So, I'm pretty confident that, even if we have a bad appraisal, it's still gonna be about twice that much. And
Yeah.
therefore, we qualify to get the full refund.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And then the environmental survey.
And the
is-
environmental survey to make sure there is nothing toxic left. I mean, the only toxic stuff would be pot related, pot growing related.
Yeah, does that even count? Does that show up on a phase one environmental assessment?
I don't think so. And it's like I've walked the place, there are still a couple of tires that need to be removed.
Yeah, but they're not gonna show that, that's not gonna show what phase one will say.
And, within the ground, it was just a
Yeah.
property, so it shouldn't
Yeah.
have anything.
Yeah, they're gonna look for like dump fuel, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's if somebody dumped a bunch of fuel at some point, or if there was a fuel tank.
Per diems cook supper. They just didn't give any tests.
I mean, storage.
We require them.
All right. Very good. We have everybody. So, anyway, that's exciting. Another thing that would be great to have is like a ecological assessment survey,
What?
like an ecological assessment.
Well, we got the forester did the plan and she,
And I'd like to look at, I'd like to look at that stuff someday.
we have invasive, we
When I
need
have a big-
people to clear up the invasives.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that for a day or two, show up with my saw, I have a saw, I can do it. Lord knows I have
It's
enough
on
of
a
those to clear off
recording,
my.
so you got his words that he would.
Say it to the whole town, I'll help clear invasives from the forest preserve at your leisure. We can call the meeting to order, it is 6:03. And we don't have any members of the public. I personally don't have any adjustments to the agenda. Anybody else?
Yeah.
We can move on to approving the minutes.
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
So second.
Any discussion?
No, if we feel so.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor,
Aye.
4-0, minutes approved. We don't have. And then we just move on to discussing the application that Val has started to work on.
What I did was started by reading the land use ordinances, which clearly will be updated also.
Working on it.
I know, I'm just commenting, okay?
We talked about that last time.
Yeah.
Very good. And then I looked at both of the application performance standard review and then the application performance standard, the old and the new. And what I tried to do was pull up the important points or the points that seem to be what we talk about the most and put it in an order It makes it easy for the applicant to fill it out and for us to understand what's happening.
Mhm.
So I don't know whether I have everything or whether went overboard on some stuff, but we can go through them. So basically, date, application name, application address and contact, proposed use, and I wrote industrial, commercial, or residential. We seem to have residential going towards commercial, and then we'll separate out industrial, commercial.
Yeah.
According to both our ordinances and the state ordinances, those are the categories.
Yep.
And then map location is address for map and lot.
Yep.
And then owner of the property if it's different than the applicant, and then owner's permission if it's applicable.
Yep.
And then I went into land use ordinance, district type for land use. This is the only real technical stuff. And refer to land use ordinance, document attendance, and if it's not listed in the ordinance, then no.
Yeah.
So that's kind of for us to know whether it's in the ordinance or whether we have to pay attention otherwise.
Yeah, so it's whether. They're looking at the table of uses in the ordinance, and they're
Yes.
telling us what they think they are applying under.
Thank you, table of uses, yes.
Yeah. That makes sense to have it in there, because I think that. I guess in this line, I think they should say. What they're trying to do, like they should say specifically, if they say like, it's a car wash, or it's a,
Right, yeah.
but then they should
It's all
also
under
say.
that.
You know, it's a car wash, but that counts as commercial under 10,000 square feet in land use ordinance.
Well, that's why I had proposed use up top.
Yeah, okay,
So-
but then I thought it was circling one,
But
but
yeah, but anyway,
yeah, we should, as long as it's clear, they should write that also, that's all I
Yes.
care about, that's great.
and so there's some things that we've discussed that are not in the table of use, and there are other things that are, so. We'll
Yeah.
see what happens. And are there any restrictions, considerations, or special exemptions that need to be paid attention to? And I think this will come into more play when we have the new ordinances.
Yeah.
Site map required, so this basically says, we can put instructions in there if we need to.
Yeah.
Basically, where are the existing buildings and dimensions, roadways, driveways, water wells, subject. Setback, any distances, environmental factors that have to be paid attention to, water, forest, or field. What are the abutting properties and anything else that we may not have paid attention to?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, I think we'll want to, when we finalize it, just use, some specific terms, like we should say wetlands and streams specifically.
As opposed to water.
As opposed to just water, I mean, water bodies in general should be on the map, but
Right.
specifically
Yeah,
any
yeah, 'cause you've got
any
different
wetlands
kinds
or
of flood.
streams.
Yes,
Will have specific setbacks for DEP,
Right.
depending on their size and their impact, and,
Wetland of special,
yeah, there's like, if it's a wetland, it's a wetland, but then if it's a special wetland with X
Estuary.
number of egg masses or
That
vernal
estuary.
pools, like we should say
Yeah.
vernal pools.
we probably should say vernal pools.
Because vernal pools have wicked setbacks,
Right,
My wife would be very upset if I didn't say vernal pool. She used to teach it one.
yeah,
isn't she applying to the Conservation Commission?
we're
I'll talk to her.
talk to her. So I think just making sure we have like all of the named environmental factors that will have state restrictions on them and also restrictions from our own ordinance just should be listed so people can know.
Okay, so
And
I
I
can
think-
dig in a little more on that then.
That's just a little bit of a longer list, I think.
Yeah,
that's
and then abutting properties and any other topics there are, anything else that we may want to know about.
Abutting properties, I mean, are we just like abutting or do we set a specific perimeter?
I think just abutting on the site map. Because it's a bit hard, it gets vague. if you
Yeah,
draw too
but
big, but-
remember we had agreed that when time comes, like waters within.
Yeah, yeah.
Perimeters had to be notified.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit. I think we're the ones who are gonna have to determine which,
Yeah.
who fits in that perimeter, because I think unless we're starting to require. And this came up last night at the ordinance review meeting, like unless we're starting to require everybody to have a site plan that's really like drawn by a surveyor. Which is pretty onerous,
And
for some businesses.
and costly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Then they're just not gonna know.
Yeah.
But I think we should have property lines. So I think abutting properties there, but we should say property lines specifically, and then distances from structures to property lines.
I mean, the butters, they can go to the website and look at the tax maps.
Yeah, and then just list it out.
See
Yeah, yeah.
share.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine, but I think if you're starting to say like what's in a 500 foot radius, like you're not gonna.
Along with this, are we
Right.
going to review our process?
Yeah,
You know, like, some point we had agreed that we would not grant the permit on the first visit. And of course, it happened on the worst possible case that we did that. And, so I'd like us to, well, not all those.
I agree with that. So we should just call up the bylaws. We should, at the next meeting, I think, as part of this ongoing process, we should review and discuss the bylaws and the actual planning board ordinance. Make sure that everybody is, we're all good on
Correct.
what all that says.
That,
Um,
and to what you're talking about, you go to the second page, I kind of listened.
Discuss the bylaws and what?
and the planning board ordinance. It's just one page. But it's the ordinance that establishes the planning board. I think,
I think it's less than one page.
it's one, I think it's one page.
Yeah.
It says the duties and the,
Exactly.
but I just feel like we might as well look at it together
Correct.
if we're talking about the process. Because that's what we really have to comply with. We can amend the bylaws at will,
Yeah.
but, we can't amend the ordinance. We can recommend that it be amended, but we can't do it. Okay,
And then I put in there whether or not there's any state, federal, or town permits and whether they're secure.
yep, that's helpful.
And then,
I have a question regarding this, you know, I'd like to understand better, the order of the permit granting. Like if somebody goes to the state and, you know, before coming to us and the state grants the permit, is that even feasible?
They can do that, but
So then-
they then run the risk that we would apply additional conditions that they did not
yes,
account
Right.
for
Okay.
in the state permitting, and we have the right to do
But
that.
those conditions would have to be in the ordinance.
The conditions would have to be allowed by, like, the conditions have to be conditions that are, that we're allowed to apply
Okay.
by our own ordinances.
Okay.
Ordinances, all of them, right, not just the land use.
Okay, so that's
the
what
shoreline.
we,
Okay,
and I spoke with the state and they said that they set the basic benchmark. And we as the town can actually have stricter regulations than them if we wish.
yeah,
Okay.
and we can.
Yeah.
And that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's what the ordinance review committee is looking at, for example, the mineral extraction ordinance. Which will be based on state standards, but will have, you know, be tailored to South
but
Thompson.
are you viewing a more general case? What if there is a new type of activity that doesn't exist yet in this town? You know, instead of always being reactive,
A little bit,
can we anticipate and put up a protection ahead of time?
I think we can, because that's why the table of uses, if it's not in the table of use,
Yes.
it allows us to have the conversation that you're just talking
Yeah.
about.
yeah, I think, in other words, yes. And I think that if you have ideas for things that you would like the ordinance review committee to consider. Please just send,
It's just-
you can go ahead and send me an email, send Jeff. an
Things
email.
that are going to be extremely disruptive either to the environment or the quality of
Yeah,
life.
so I
of
think
people.
just so, and I'll say this germane to this topic is that. The two things that the committee is doing right now, three things. The ordinance review committee is working on is mineral extraction. A site plan review ordinance, which will impose like more detailed site plan standards on commercial activities. Which will essentially, I think, give the planning board just a little bit more, essentially more to comment on. And more. Not necessarily more authority to deny permits, but more authority to condition them on
Yes.
site plan
make sure.
conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also we'll just make the standards clear that make sure that we, for example, as a town, always have good. Up-to-date documentation of what the actual activities are on the ground at certain places. So that ordinance is being drafted. And the third thing they're working on is just like that landscaping definition that we were trying to deal with. Cause that's actually an amendment to the land use ordinance. And it will also appear in the site plan review ordinance. Those are three things we're working on right now. And those are all, you know, in draft form, in various levels of completeness. But,
And if you're reading the land use ordinance and going through this, the one thing that keeps coming back to my mind is, you know, the zoning. And we haven't touched the zoning years.
we amended the zoning in 2021, but yes.
But the demographics and the mix use or the different use of the properties, in other words, we've become more residential over the years, especially since COVID. There are more houses that are being built closer to each other or next to each other. And questionable pieces of property. Now, the prime example I have is the farm up on Waterman Beach Road. That sits just between where Cindy, the gnome lady, is, and Snowdale Cove, Snowdale Road.
Persons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, what's gonna happen to that? Because the last thing I think anyone in the neighborhood wants to see is either another quarry or a junkyard or a manufacturing plant built into that. But I think there's enough wetland in there to prevent anything significant.
Is it for sale?
Yeah,
it's for sale and I believe somebody looking into it, keep it a farm and could make a horse farm out of it. That's. the
I
latest
didn't
stuff.
even know it was for sale.
Yeah,
that would be, I think everyone would be. okay
we
with
also
that.
have to remember, we also have to remember that the farm across the road is owned differently than.
Yeah.
They're,
The both sides of the road are separate pieces,
Yeah.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
now
separate
separate,
entities.
yeah.
Yeah.
And someone like Ray Martin would love to lease the land to grow more crops.
Mhm.
yeah,
So I think that's just a point in conversation. But I imagine that there's other properties in the area or in the town where people have those concerns.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think that is, you know. I think the way to engage the ordinance review committee in that process would be to send an email to us and to the select board. And say. Make a note that. You think that there are. Maybe it's, I don't know whether it's zoning for. View sheds, for example. Like overlay districts that protect certain scenic areas of town from certain types of, I mean, I'm not necessarily advocating for any of that, but I think that
To me.
if there is a groundswell of interest in protecting certain pieces of the town. In order to sort of maintain its scenic rural character, that would be something that you would point out to the select board and say, like, we believe that zoning in certain areas should be amended to protect those conditions that we value specifically, and then we can find a way to do it, you know?
Even though.
And then it has, of course, has to be voted on, but
Like the mixed zones issue. If you have the mixed zone, you know, I feel. It doesn't mean that business gets to do what it wants to do. To me, it's like. They are both concerns, so there should be room for compromise. And certainly, you know, the worst of industrial activity should not be allowed in a mixed zone. And
yeah, no, of course, and I think basically what we understand from state law is that we have to have a zone
A
in town
zone.
where we allow that stuff to be. And right now, it's the entire middle of town, right? It's our
Yeah.
one zone. It's that green part.
Yeah.
And. You know, and that's,
but this, again, even that rule doesn't make sense to me because the town is not very big in superficie, you know.
I just think that's just what we've been told by, you know, Kristen's told us that 100 times. But, you know, if you want, I mean, if you. I'm not enough of an expert in the law to know, like, what the boundaries are in terms of what can be allowed and what can be disallowed. So I think. I do urge. You though to just raise those concerns with the select board, raise those concerns, so that there can be. You know, cause I don't think. That the ordinance review committee can take that up without direction from the select, or at least without.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement from the select board.
Mhm.
But generally, like, I think that this is a good opportunity.
A better framework to, you know, consider the review of the 10-year plan or, you know.
That also needs to be updated soon in the next
So,
couple of
and that
years.
would be better if you consider all these things within that framework, wouldn't it?
Of course, but it's not binding.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but the 10-year plan then can become a basis to review the ordinances to
Yeah.
be consistent with the 10-year plan.
exactly. No, that's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's coming up in the next couple of years. But I don't think it's coming up like right now. So if you are. It depends on the level of urgency that people in the town feel. That a change to the town's ordinances and zoning. Might be required.
Okay.
But I agree with you, ideally, you would have a comprehensive plan, but I actually, honestly, I think that the comprehensive plan that we have is probably. You could make changes to the ordinance in certain ways that would still be in keeping with the old comprehensive plan.
I mean, I'm not saying.
In service
it's
of
so
goals,
bad,
in
but it
service
needs
of
to be
goals.
reviewed.
Yeah, of course. But I think things like protecting rural character, for example, are in there.
Yeah, but what
Um,
does that mean? I think that's what, you know, we
Yeah, yeah.
need to define.
But I think, yeah. Either way.
Yeah.
I would just start the conversation. I believe Val is gonna do it. I think Val's gonna do it. I mean, I don't know, that's fine.
So underneath, then.
Yeah, okay, we're going.
Number 5 is commercial use, and I made a note to myself, expansions. So, and I made a note to myself also, if we go back to the first page, proposed use, is it new, an expansion, or other?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
That
So
makes
we
sense.
will correct that proposed use.
So then these
Yeah,
are
making
all,
matrix kind of thing, and, you know.
these are all for, these are all,
So
below
under-
this are things we are considering related to commercial uses.
Yes, so underneath commercial use, and it pretty much
Is,
came out of this in the ordinances.
is a multifamily development a commercial use?
That's, yes, I would probably say it is, because revenue's involved. You're gonna be renting for revenue,
This condo,
unless it's a nuclear family and you basically, it's mom, dad, and
No,
grandparents.
Right.
I mean, we have a subdivision ordinance that we need to probably read again also, but, I just think we should make sure that, cause I think some of this stuff like traffic, you know,
Yes,
et cetera, all this environmental impact stuff, much of it. Sewage, yada, yada, is all gonna come up in the multifamily as well.
well, like I said, this is just a draft, me trying to pull.
Yeah, no, I just think, I was just, that was,
Making it readable,
yeah, no, it is a lot more readable, it's a lot more readable.
and I'll format it later after we know what we wanna say. So in terms of commercial use, I said operational plan or business plan. Okay?
Yep,
Conservation and remediation plans, because obviously some things will require that, both state and
Yep.
our laws. Is it visible from the road, yes or no? And if it's a yes, then we talk about landscaping, screening, and fences.
yep,
Road type, Travis raised that, I put it in here because Travis raised it, I'm not quite sure what to do with it.
he just wants us to make note of whether it's a town road or a state road, it's a different
Okay,
requirements for entrance permits.
and then also, yeah, entrance requirements and also weight then,
Yeah, and
Okay.
if there are weight limits.
because we have the weight limits in terms of certain roads in town for the
Yeah.
winter, in terms of fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll clarify that, town or state, then entrance and weight. And then staffing, are you gonna have increased staffing, which then gets us into parking issues, customer traffic, security, hours of operation, signage, parking, lighting, so.
So I'm wondering, I guess here's a question that it seems to come to me is like. Some of these things feel like you've grouped environmental impact. Like, and I think it's helpful to have it all grouped. I'm wondering if we have like parking and traffic grouped, and that is the staffing, the staffing, the hours, the parking, and all the traffic stuff.
So I can bring that,
It's called like traffic or something.
I actually, yeah. It's operation, it's daily operation, but
Yeah.
I'll come up with a category.
But I think having it grouped like that is helpful to me to think about it, because it's like, this is what we're talking about, and here are all the facets of it.
Okay,
I think that just, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and because then that ties in with the environmental impact.
I think lighting is an environmental impact.
Okay, move it down to environmental. I was also thinking of it as a safety issue, if you got lights staring at people and it's actually environmental and nuisance. Could be either or.
Yeah,
Then underneath environmental impact, noise obviously does traffic, pedestrian hazards, odors, chemicals, vibration, nuisances, and residential impact. And
I would add storm water and runoff.
so it'd be basically be drainage.
Yeah, drainage and I might say runoff specifically because
Yeah.
that's gonna be regulated by the state for some of this stuff, but we can also like. We should be able to make. Recommend, like, in a situation where there's an obvious runoff problem, like they built their parking lot, like they're slightly uphill, they're shedding all their water into the neighbors, like. I don't know, right on the well or
A
something.
good example is that piece of property in Waterman Beach Road, but number one, Snow Hill Cove, that blank piece of property. That was sold 2 years ago, that butts onto our marsh. Are you familiar with that one? Okay.
I haven't heard any complaints about it yet.
There's no complaints because they haven't built,
Oh, okay.
but I don't think we're gonna be able to complain because he is a lawyer working for the state. And she's a corporate litigator working for one of the law firms in Portland.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that property was very wet and their builder cut a culvert. On the side of their property that drained it into the street, drained it into the shoulder of the street. And then drains into the marsh.
Hmm.
So, but again, we got two lawyers, one's a corporate litigator and one works for the state, will be nice.
But
And they are lovely
There's another
people.
lawyer in town.
They
That's the
are
old
lovely.
lady. She's a
I've
lawyer.
met them, they're lovely people, and their two kids love hanging out in the marsh when the tide goes out because it's like sitting in a waterfall.
that's funny. But that's, yeah, that is, I mean. Obviously, but I mean, it's residential, so we're not gonna get that
Yeah.
application, but I think just being able to. Reminding ourselves to ask about it, I think is
Yeah.
valuable.
And then. I don't know what we have in terms of nuisance in town for our town ordinances, but the state ordinances on nuisance are pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so we should pay attention to that because it gets you into the. To avoid a problem for the town, if you start looking at this, reading the state ordinances for nuisance. Individuals can basically say it's a nuisance and go to the town for a tax abatement. And quote state statute, the town is gonna have to give it.
Okay,
So I think we have to be careful on how we want to define it, and be aware of
I
nuisance.
think we wanted to have that on recording.
Hey,
We'll have a flood of abatement required.
Yeah.
There's the request and then there's the reality of the request, whether it's a legitimate request, because the state is pretty specific about it.
I think. That's another one that I think would make sense to bring up as a referral to the ordinance review committee also.
Yes,
Because if we need to add state language of a definition of that. Into our ordinance,
yeah,
we were the ones who would do that,
Yeah.
so.
and then underneath that, I put residential impacts, so we'll have to decide how we want to look at that. And then I said,
What does that mean to you?
If you're putting a junkyard next to someone's house. That's residential impact,
That's like, that impacts their, for example, their property value.
property value, quality of life.
Yeah, so but quality of life would be affected by nuisance also.
Exactly. So
But I think it's reasonable, okay, I'll agree that it's reasonable to talk specifically about how it would impact surrounding
Yes.
houses. So I think it's good, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you meant by it.
Yeah, so maybe those two I can put underneath residential impact together.
Yeah.
Group them. Okay,
And I think some of this stuff, like specifically like maybe nuisance, under nuisance, we have noise, dust, odors, vibration. Chemicals are obviously their own category.
yeah,
But I think starting to group some of those things under nuisance might be helpful.
okay. Oh, I will play with it.
Or just
go
as,
back.
just as an
Yeah.
idea, you know?
Well, I can go back and reread the ordinances and the state statutes and see where things fit in.
That makes good sense.
Makes it easy for us. And then I said maintenance and inspection. So basically, maintain, if it's become a new commercial property, how is it gonna be maintained? What are the state and town inspections? And I just put in there generally water, sewage or other.
Yep,
And then documentation and report.
I think a common inspection that we ask for is fire, emergency access,
Fire.
so fire and
Yeah,
EMS.
exactly. Because it was. I spoke with the fire chief when we first moved up here years ago, and I said, how much, I said, we're not always here, so we had a person clearing the snow for us.
Yeah.
And he says, he said to me, we want to make sure that two people can go into the property side by side in terms of snow.
Mhm.
I thought that was a very good comment.
Yeah,
So that's why I said inspections and things, maintenance.
yeah, that
And
makes
then
sense.
emergency access. And then I said documentation and written reporting to the. Yeah,
Mhm.
basically, once we approve it, are they in compliance and are we following up? To make sure they maintain their compliance.
Mhm.
Why are you looking at me?
Because I'm just looking out for you. And then underneath the last category is residential use, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. And I was now going back, if it's residential over here on page 1, do we have other things that we need to pay attention to? If they're adding a jewelry store, or if they're adding a horse farm or something like that, or where do we want, and at that point, it kind of crosses over to
Yeah.
commercial again.
Yeah, that's a that starts to be a home.
But we also
occupation.
had the
Well, I think-
gentleman who wanted to raise his house.
Yeah, so that's the only residential we deal with.
Yes, so basically I said proposed,
Shoreland.
yeah,
Yeah, so
so I
I
said proposed changes or use of property.
think that's fine.
And that's as far as I got without getting too brain dead on this.
Bring up an issue, like I attended the conference of the Conservation Commission and it was, everybody was telling that they were working in the bigger towns, we are moving into areas where I was like, and essentially the planning boards and conservation commissions were working together in the case of residential developments. And really focusing on the design of the development for minimum environmental impact.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if you're familiar with that and
We've done projects in towns in Massachusetts where we needed a vote of the Conservation Commission and approval from the Conservation Commission to move forward.
yes, so.
Some of them have,
There are
quite
some
a lot of
towns who
authority.
actually will not review permits until it has been reviewed by the Conservation Commission, but we are just too small a town to do this kind of thing. And, but it's like, it's worth looking into because I don't know where there are big areas, but like even not far from here, there was like something that was, is there a street that was originally designed for a development and it never happened? Like when you look at the map, it looks like all kinds of little plots next to one another, just. When you.
yeah, I mean, I think we do have a subdivision ordinance, which has a lot of standards, I think primarily there are like
But it's
roads,
like, we might
sewage.
wanna look at,
Yeah.
could it be improved, same thing for,
And I personally, and I don't know, it depends on the level of expertise that really exists on the Conservation Commission, I don't know. But,
there are templates at this point, several towns have done it and. they
no,
are
I know, but I'm
models
saying like in
already.
terms of like what the standard, like what the review looks like.
Hmm.
Like, is the level of expertise that's required for that is like the ability of everyone on the Conservation Commission to look at a set of plans. And sort of understand the environmental issues that might be presented by that set of plans and then comment constructively. And that's, it's not that hard, but it's just takes some practice.
Mhm.
And, I'm not a landscape architect, I can do that for building code, but I'm not gonna be able to do that necessarily for.
I brought
For-
back some documentation, some people
Yeah,
have
yeah.
worked on it and tried to explain the principle of it and then
What I
Yes.
would say is about that is that I would also write a note about that and possibly send the documentation
yeah,
to Jeff North Graves, and you can CC me on that.
yeah,
And just because if we're writing a site plan review ordinance for commercial, for example, if the Conservation Commission wants to be included in that process,
It's just issues manpower, you know, that, I mean, you have Sandra with you.
yeah, I mean, but I think if you think like it's not even so much manpower. It's like we're not gonna get that many reviews. It's like you have a Conservation Commission meeting every month, like you can, if you'll have a standing agenda item and it's like review applications, comment, send it to the planning board discuss it,
Yeah, I
or whatever it is. But I think it doesn't, the process, we don't need to solve it right now, but I think if you think,
In the 10 years I've been here, there has no been, you know, developments, so.
yeah, well, I mean, residential developments, but I think there's no, like a commercial development that has all these, you know, a commercial development of significant size and impact would maybe benefit from that kind of review also.
Yeah,
If the review, if the commission is able to do the review in a way that results in like constructive and useful feedback. I don't know, I've never been, I don't.
but again, you know.
But I think, but I think, yeah, I would just mention it, just send a note. And I think, I'd be curious what Sandra thinks of it.
What?
What do you, have you talked about it with Sandra?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, have you talked about it? I'm still wondering what Sandra would think, because I think there's,
I don't
There's a
think we
little-
spent time on it because we didn't want it to be a responsibility of ours and, you know.
okay, well, I think just send a note and
Yeah.
I'm happy to discuss it with
Yeah.
the ordinance folks, just as a question. So I think in general, you know, having more eyes on applications isn't bad necessarily.
Just
But I
be
think the
aware
issue is where it
of the
starts to
issue at
become,
this
yeah,
point.
exactly, and it could be totally advisory,
Yeah,
but it could be also like. The thing we just wanna be careful about is like. Swinging too far to being like punitively difficult to get permits.
no,
And
no,
then-
that's not the point.
I know, but I understand, but I'm saying that's just like what we'd be watching out for.
Yeah,
If we were trying to sort of add a step to the process, for example, like. And then what types of application need to
Mm.
like rise to a level of impact where we wanna have that. But
I'll review the documentation I got and then.
yeah,
Mm.
but I think right, like the point is because we have these new the ordinance is being reviewed right now, I think it's a good time to just throw it in the mix. I think, and see what
And there's
people agree on.
And in doing my homework, I came across two things. Gorham and I think it was Alfred. They specifically earmarked certain things that they said they didn't want the planning board to touch and went to the select board.
Mhm.
One of them was an industrial expansion of a quarry and a cement plant, and I can't remember what the other one was. So that's something for us just to put in the back of our mind that maybe there's things that we as the planning board should push up the ladder to address. And then when you said review the process, I wrote myself a note. We legally meet the notification of going out 10 days before and posting here and posting there. But I think that there's probably a better way or a more complete way, I don't know what the adjective is, for us to make sure that more people are aware of what's going on. So that they have a chance to comment. So instead of us saying at one meeting, yes, if we're in agreement, maybe we say that part of the process is. It isn't we feel that, you know, the application is in order, however, we want to open it up to discussion.
Yeah, and we have a process for that in the bylaws, to
Okay.
have a public hearing and we
Good.
set some standards for what the size of a project would be that would require a public hearing, but we can always call one
Yeah.
if we want to.
And I think we should not forget that we have that ability to do
Yeah.
it.
But I think that's a good segue into what we should talk about next time, which is reviewing those bylaws and
Yes.
processes. And what I don't know is, and I'll bring this to the ordinance review folks, is I think as those ordinances get more fleshed out, like as the drafts are starting to get better,
Yes,
we're gonna bring them back and we'll look at them.
Yeah,
Together.
I think
We'll have joint
literally
meetings. Yeah,
as I was just said, no, we should work more closely with the environmental, all of the committees when it comes to the new ordinance issue, just sit down and.
yeah, I think so, and we'll send them out, I mean, like, it's, we're. The only issue I can think of is that we're gonna run into short timelines to get drafts ready for our town meeting.
Yeah.
But I think specifically the site plan review. And the mineral extraction will definitely need to get planning board feedback.
Good.
So that's coming up soonish. I mean, how long were you guys there last night?
Can't remember. Wasn't that late, wasn't that much longer if you look.
Okay,
But,
we're working on it.
but anyway, that's
That's a
what
lot of minutia to go through for those.
So what I'll do is I'll clean this up and sit down another draft, everyone, and you have another
Okay.
conversation.
That sounds great.
Sounds good.
But I thought I was brain dead, but obviously I was okay, but.
Yeah, you're doing fine. I think we're getting, and I like this format, like that we're talking just about the content.
Yeah.
And the order, and then we'll deal with the formatting later. I think that's good.
I mean, that's the only way for us to discuss them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna put the time into formatting it, if you know what we have.
Yeah.
Right, right.
All right, and so, a motion to adjourn. So moved. Everyone's happy. We're good. 6:40. 6:40. So.